let's switch gears a little bit. And the unemployment figures for January, the U.S. rate was at 9.8%. Statewide, we were at 9.5%. Allen County was at 10.3%. And that was actually, I believe, up over the previous month. Not quite a percent, but it was up.
Right.
Government doesn't create jobs.
Hopefully not.
Hopefully not. But what are some things that government can do to maybe spur some things, spur some growth?
I think what government can do is make it as easy as possible for businesses to grow. And that can be, I think government should only do the most fundamental services that you can't do in the private sector. Public safety, for example, fire, police protection. We take care of the roads. We plow them, we repair them, that sort of thing. So that's pretty fundamental. Literally, that's the grassroots. Are we doing everything we can so that businesses can move their goods on the ground? And are there infrastructure improvements that we need to make? I would add to that now that there are technological infrastructure improvements that we need to make. Do we have all the technology underground that is available? Can we assist businesses in any way? That's an issue I've heard some business talk about. That's one issue in terms of creating jobs, making sure when they want to create the jobs that they're going to be able to actually function then at that higher level, the businesses, that infrastructure is there. The second part about it is, are we imposing too many restrictions on them so that the cost of doing business is too high? And I think that's something that we do right now. So if you have $1 in your pocket and you get to keep it, you'll spend that $1 in your business, either by hiring or producing a good or buying a merchandise for your company. That's something that we want to encourage. So if we can eliminate costs for you, if we can streamline what we do, our services, so that you pay less, whether it's on your property tax bill or whether it's in terms of development plans and permitting fees or any other fees that the government imposes on you, at least on a local level, let's look at that and make sure we keep that number as low as possible.
Would you be open to exploring, of course, don't have any figures or facts or anything like that, but let's say that you became mayor and someone knocked on your door one day and said, we're here and we would like to take over the parking violations for the city. Or some other function that the government does that maybe could be handled in a private company.
Right.
Would you be in favor of looking at that? Do you think that's a good idea? And again, we don't have any specifics.
Right. I think you look at all those things. As I said, there are a few fundamental services that people expect and I think are rightly in the hands of government, no matter what the level. And then, as I said, public safety, fire, police, taking care of roads and infrastructure. Those are public entities, public right-of-ways. No particular individual owns them or can do that on their own. But when it's something like that, for example, say parking violations, are we using that most efficiently? That is not a unique or special entity. Or is there some part of that process that can be done at less cost and faster than we're doing it ourselves? Because we do become entrenched. And I think that's a great example. That's a $500,000 budget. I think there are 9 to 12 employees in that department, and are they doing everything they can? And have they ever stepped back and looked at their mission? Is it to make money for the city? Is it to be ambassadors for the city? Or is it just to make people grouse as they're looking for a quarter? I don't know. So.
Sure. Again, I know I'm in that latter category because I never have change on me. Rarely have cash.
Right.
Well, looking at kind of the overall picture of the tax rates in Fort Wayne, do you think that tax rates are high? Do you think they're low? Do you think maybe we should explore cutting? That kind of goes hand in hand with the budget.
Right.
And also the property tax caps. I mean, it's not just as simple as maybe saying, today we're going to cut taxes. What are your views on?
Right. We don't have a lot of authority at the local level on cutting taxes. It's just cutting our spending. And whatever we cut, some other entity under this property tax cap may acquire those dollars. But hopefully we're all being fiscally responsible going forward. But certainly the city that goes back to what you said about the tax abatements. We've had some recent discussions at the table, even though we did look at that ordinance and I think we tightened it up. I've had some discussions lately with business owners, and that's a hard line. At what point are these businesses going to expand anyway? So If they don't get a property tax abatement, maybe they don't do that expansion. On the other hand, if they don't get a property tax abatement, those property taxes are disseminated amongst a lot of taxing authorities, from this library to the schools to the city of Fort Wayne. And so, you know, if they are not getting an abatement, then those dollars are being spent, and then maybe we're not taking more dollars from all the other citizenry. So I think that's a way you impact. I don't think the property tax abatement system that we have now actually takes that many dollars out of the system. So I'm not really sure you'd see a big impact from that. But I certainly think as long as you are keeping your budget and your processes lean, that you're certainly not going to be raising taxes when the opportunity comes, because it doesn't come all the time. But certainly with the tax cap, we had that option of the local option income tax. And I certainly don't think the city of Fort Wayne has made all the cuts that it can and all the efficiencies it can when our mayor had contemplated raising that in his first year in office. I think we need to look at those things first before we add another tax.
Well, not to put you on a spot, but I've heard you say many times that there are no sacred cows.
Yes.
The one that kind of comes to mind anytime that we talk about tax rates or where tax dollars are going, CityLink, you know, heavily subsidized.
Yes.
Do you think that that's something that needs to be looked at a little bit closer?
I've had those concerns. We've had when the CityLink budget came to us. It doesn't come to us often. It came when they asked for rate increase or the levy increase. We had to vote for that, the city council, and we have only one or two appointees, I think, to their large board. So we don't have a lot of influence over that. But I think any entity, and I've been adamant about this, whether it's the Downtown Improvement District or the Alliance or CityLink, any entity that receives tax dollars and over which we have authority as the city council and certainly as the mayor, then we should certainly look long and hard at how they're spending those dollars most efficiently. And I'm sure that if we started cutting all those subsidies to the various entities that receive them, then that would be an incentive for them to look a little harder. So that's not to say that they necessarily would be cutting services, but certainly some of the routes that they run, I mean, they'd have to justify their expenses on those routes. And that goes for anything. And it may turn out, not to pick on CityLink, it may turn out that the particular department is doing all it can. And we think that the service that they're providing is worth the expense to the city. But certainly we need to review it. And I have to say I've not seen us reviewing those entities with that degree of scrutiny that I would like to see.
Well, and one of the safe assumptions for me to make without looking through the budgets exactly dollar for dollar, but I think one of the safe assumptions is that the majority of the budgets are personnel.
Yes, that's...
And where do you go from there? I mean, if you start cutting personnel, you're obviously going to have to cut services or cut something out.
Well, not always. I mean, if you cut personnel, depending, I mean, we're not talking about police and fire, for example, although there's been some, not downsizing, but we have a Quint truck now, and the Fire Station 14, I think it is, across from Steiner High School. So that's a 5-person truck instead of a 6-person. So we didn't lose firefighters, but we save on overtime staffing because there's one less person in the rotation. So indirectly, that's a way of cutting personnel. But I also think you have to look at your process. Just, you know, getting back to the city clerk's office and VHS tape. Whatever we're doing now, say in street repair, if it takes 5-6 people to do it, are there efficiencies? There may be some capital costs up front, but are there some kinds of equipment or processes or efficiencies we can implement that will eliminate personnel going forward? And you're right, because personnel costs a lot. You have retiree costs, health benefit costs, legacy costs. Those things are expensive, and we don't usually let people go. So once they're hired there for life. So I think if we can keep our personnel numbers down, that would be a huge improvement.